Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the WST Bombers Report. My name is Connor Hrabchak. Soon I'm going to be joined by Zach Schnitzer from Bonfire Sports Winnipeg. And together we're going to be breaking down the Bombers' 26-13 win over the Montreal Alouettes, their second straight. That improves them to 6-4 on the season. And then later on in the show, we're going to preview the upcoming Labor Day Classic between the Bombers and the Riders, and obviously the Banjo Bowl, as the teams will play a home-and-home over the next 2 weeks. But before we get into all that, let's bring in Zach himself. Zach, how are you doing today? Breaking down another Bombers win here on the WST Bombers Report.
I'm doing well, buddy. You look nice and tan from your trip out west. That looked like an elite golf course, like a bucket list, man. That is awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's been, I full disclosure, just got off the flight, did watch the game, was very locked in. Big win for the Bombers. Was able to find some cell service out there to watch the game. So
nice.
Yeah, I had a fantastic trip, and I am ready, fired up and ready to be back here. Zach, I do just want to, before we get into the game, I do want to mention Craig Smith, a longtime CFL scout and someone who was in the WST chat very, very often and the Bonfire Winnipeg chat very, very often, passed away, or the news came out late Sunday that he passed away. Very sad news, and I just want to give you the opportunity, Zach, to maybe share some words on that before we get into the game that we'll talk about.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, Craig Smith was, first of all, a beloved player personnel man in the CFL with BC, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg as well. Made his home in Regina, knew so much about football, and he shared it on our chats. Bonfire, as you mentioned, he was on that chat since the beginning, and WST. He was always kind. He'd share things in a very collegial way, even though he knew more than all of us combined. And just really, we're gonna miss him on the chat, and I'm sure his family and friends are devastated, and we send our best to them. So shout out to Craig Smith. Rest in peace, my friend. You will definitely be missed, and condolences to his friends and family and colleagues in the CFL community for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Very, very sad news, and our thoughts are with his family. Let's talk about this football game, Zach. Like I said, off the top, the Bombers with their second straight win, 26-13, this one over the Montreal Alouettes. I'll kind of just give you the floor here. What are your initial takeaways? I mean, we've had a few days here to think about it a little bit more, look ahead to the upcoming Labor Day with Saskatchewan losing to Calgary over the weekend as well. What were your thoughts on this game? I mean, they're playing against a fourth-string quarterback on the road against a really good defense. And I think there was a lot to like, even though the score, maybe looks a little bit closer, 26-13, than you might have initially thought, having watched that game. But I came away from that pleasantly surprised with the amount of, optimism the Bombers could take, albeit against a fourth-string quarterback, going into two of maybe the two most important regular season games of the year.
Yeah, I thought both in terms of the standings and psychologically, Connor, this was a game the Bombers absolutely had to have. Like you mentioned, you have James Morgan, who's the fourth string quarterback starting, and going into the Labor Day and Banjo Bowl matchup. If you have any hopes of a home playoff game, we don't even have to talk about first place. Let's talk about second place, especially with the way Calgary's been playing. You needed to win this game. And you needed to win it somewhat emphatically, and it was close. But for me, and I don't think this is going to come as a surprise, Connor, we got to look at this offense and what they were able to do, especially at the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter, with that 10-play, 81-yard drive when the receiving core was so depleted that Chris Streveler had to come in at receiver, mostly in a blocking role. Stearns and Demski go down, your top two receivers on the team. And Zach Collaros was throwing dimes. We can't understate the fact that the pass set up the run in this game. As Zach Collaros was so on point, it loosened up the defense. And then you saw Brady Oliveira go off. I mean, he ended up, Connor, with 210 yards. But we were talking about this before we started, right? Just the way he took over that game. Yeah. Yes, the offensive line was finally making gaping holes for him, especially that interior with Kolinkowski, Neufeld, and Wallace. I liked their game. But Brady Oliveira was, if we look at that touchdown drive and that 3-yard touchdown at the end, Dylan Wynn has him dead to rights, Connor, squares him up in the hole, and Brady Oliveira just knocks him off, sheds that tackle, goes in for the touchdown. The Bombers go up by 10, and you kind of knew just the way James Morgan was playing, had some halfy feet, was missing wide open guys. The game was essentially over at 23-10. But that is a big boy drive for the Bombers. I think we might look back at that drive that iced this game as a statement drive in the season of the Bombers. They go to 6-4. They were on the road against a tough Montreal defense. I know they had their fourth-string QB, and the defense was maybe getting tired at the end because Montreal's offense wasn't able to stay on the field. But that is the second best rush defense in the CFL. That's a complicated defense from Noel Thorpe. You saw 7 guys coming to the line, 2 dropping out, 4 dropping out. Like Collaros said, nothing downfield, whether because Montreal was taking that away or because we just don't have the horses to get open. But that's a good defense. And to go in there and for Brady to go off when everybody in that stadium, whether they were blaring horns or not, we got to talk about that maybe another time. The stupid sirens. But everybody knew Stearns is out. Demski is out. Strevler's playing receiver. He's blocking. They're going to run the ball, obviously. And they were still able to exert their will on that Montreal defense on the road. I couldn't have been more impressed, Connor, with the offense. They end up with 425 yards of offense against that Montreal defense, depleted as they were in the receiving core. That's their second highest offensive output yardage wise of the season. And I was super impressed with that. And I think going into this Banjo Bowl Labor Day set versus the Riders, who also have an elite defense, you have to be optimistic, because if they can get Brady going, look out. Look out for this Bombers team. Now, they had a couple of warts on defense, a couple of explosion plays, but listen, Montreal had 3 points in the second half, Connor. They caused 3 turnovers, the Bombers did. They didn't give up any turnovers. They had very few penalties. It was a great Bombers game that was somewhat reminiscent of the past few years of this dominant. I'm not saying the Bombers were dominant. I think this is the recipe that we've seen the last few years, right? You see the Bombers get ahead. They play tight defense, reasonably tight. And then they have Brady Oliveira kill the clock and just beat the tar out of the opposing defense and put the game away. And that's exactly what the Bombers were able to do in week 11. Very impressive.
Yeah, I do want to mention, you brought up the 425 net yards. I had the stats up here. The biggest thing for me, we bring it up almost every single week, but it's been such a story with this Blue Bombers team, is the turnovers. Not only forcing 3, I mean, I think you needed to force 2 or 3 turnovers against a fourth-string quarterback, whether it came on turnover on downs or interceptions or whatever the case might be, but to not turn the ball over at all on the road against the Montreal defense and run the ball down their throat like they did was the biggest thing for me that I'm going to take forward and be watching for next week. Because if the Bombers can establish that identity that we've seen for so many years but haven't seen so far this season, that is huge for their rest of season outlook. And I will say too, I'm sure there are a lot of Bomber fans, maybe you and I included, Zach, yelling at their TVs saying, "Thank you, Jason Hogan." It's about damn time that Brady Oliveira got this much run in a game, right? Now, earlier in the season, you could make the case that the offensive line wasn't doing their part and the run game wasn't as effective. But I think as much credit as Brady Oliveira deserves, which is a lot for this game, the interior of that offensive line also deserves a ton of credit. Gabe Wallace at left guard, Kolinkowski at center, and Neufeld at right guard. their push on some of those plays, some of those inside zone plays, some of the draw plays where Brady can use his vision and use his power to kind of dissect the defense and do those little jump cuts and then finish his runs hard like he always does, really is something that the Bombers can lean on or should be able to lean on the way that their roster is built. And if they can lean on that against a Saskatchewan, against a Montreal, against a Calgary later on, if they meet them in the playoffs, this team's going to look a lot different. Like you said, Demski and Stearns got hurt in this game, and you had Chris Streveler out there throwing blocks and catching passes before plays got blown dead. And maybe it was out of necessity that they had to do this, run the ball that much, that is. But if they stumbled backwards into it, I mean, it's such a clear-cut working recipe, at least in this game, and going forward, we'll see how effective it can be. I will say as well, we'll talk about this later on, Demski and Stearns, we'll see if they're able to return for the Labor Day Classic. The Bombers they'll end up having 10 days in between the Thursday night game in Montreal and then the late Sunday game in Saskatchewan for the Labor Day Classic. And Dalton Schoen practiced last week, and Demario Houston practiced last week, and Ontario Pokey Wilson, who the Bombers have the CFL rights, just got cut by the New York Jets. Like, there's a lot of things that are, I don't know. I don't even know what the term is. There are a lot of things
falling into place, maybe.
Falling into place. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, there are a lot of things falling into place for this Bombers team, and to see them have a game like that in the run game, which has been their bread and butter for the last 5 years, like you said, Zach, was very, very promising. If you're someone that still believes in the Bombers as a Grey Cup contender, I think this solidified that even more, because if they can run the ball like that, it opens up so much more for this offense. But like you said, it wasn't even the run to start. It was the pass that set up the run because Zach Collaros was dealing. So there were a lot of things. I mean, defensively, I don't take too much stock into this game. Again, it was James Morgan, fourth-string quarterback. They had some nice plays. I actually do want to bring up a Willie Jefferson knockdown that I thought was very, very key. If you take a look here, it's the 6-minute mark of the fourth quarter. They just capped off that 10-play, 81-yard touchdown driver. Brady Oliveira was fighting through tackles. Terry Wilson with a long run on 3rd and 1, which we'll get into later on. And Montreal's the ball back. And 6 minutes is an eternity in the CFL. 3rd and 4, midfield, they're going for it. This is essentially the game because you turn this ball over. The Bombers are a few yards away from Sergio Castillo's field goal range. But Alexander Hollins, who torched the Bombers all games, wide open at the first down marker, past the first down marker, and that ball is in the air. I know the graphic, you can't really see James Morgan that well, but he's in the middle of throwing or at the end of throwing that football. Willie Jefferson obviously is jumping up to knock down passes, as we see all the time, and he knocks this pass down on 3rd and 4. Would have been wide open, would have been a first down, and who knows what happens from there. We've seen some crazy things happen to the Bombers this year, especially against the Ottawa Redblacks a few weeks ago, but I just wanted to mention that as a very key play from the defense, even though we're not taking as much stock into their performance as we are the offense, because the offense played bully ball. Zach looked great, took care of the football, and as an offense, they didn't turn the ball over once, and that is really the key going forward for this offense, Zach.
100%. And I'll just, Willie Jefferson with 2 key knockdowns, especially that one. That's a great graphic. I love that. I didn't realize Hollins was that wide open because I was just watching that knockdown. I believe Jefferson now has 12 on the season. So he's going to catch, I believe it's Adrian Smith, who is 111. I think he'll catch him. Maybe not this year, but this is a defensive end with this many knockdowns. It's insane. But let's just talk about Zach Collaros for a second, Connor. 27 of 31, 87.1%. He has that touchdown to Nick Demski for 2 yards, and he has an efficiency of 120.8, ends up with 269 yards. In the second quarter, at one point, he had 13 straight completions. He would have had 14 if Corcoran doesn't drop it. Corcoran had a difficult game. That was right in his hands. He also had an offside penalty, did Corcoran. Schoen's coming back. It'll be interesting to see what that receiving core looks like. But Zach Collaros was, like you said, just dealing it. Like, he was in full control of the offense. There wasn't a lot open downfield, though he did hit Wheatfall for a 32-yard dart. That was such a beautiful throw. Pressure in his face like he did for a lot of the game because Montreal's got a great D-line. And he just gets it over linebacker Darnell Sankey's outstretched fingers, Connor. That was maybe his best throw of the season, you could argue. If Collaros doesn't have to throw for 400 yards. Like, we're talking about Brady Oliveira bully ball. If the interior of that offensive line can open up some holes, Brady got his first 100-yard game. If they can continue that, Zach just has to be that point guard. He just has to deal the ball, even if it's short stuff. They're throwing a lot of wide receiver screens and dump offs to Brady. Like, that's fine. You got to stress the defense at some point, but if he's wheeling and dealing like that and making plays off script, especially against a good defense like Montreal, looking at the Riders next, then that's a recipe for success for this offense. And even if they don't have Demski and Stearns, you got Schoen coming back, who is really arguably Collaros' safety blanket. I think you have to be optimistic about this offense going into Labor Day and Banjo Bowl.
And Zach, you can vouch for me on this one because as you know, you're always here as my co-host here on the WST Bombers Report. I said a few weeks ago, I think brighter days are ahead for this Bombers offense. I had faith, and I'm not quite taking I'm not quite taking the victory lap yet.
You should.
Well, wait. These two Rider games are obviously, like, it doesn't even have to be stated how important they are to the Bombers season. But I agree with what you said about Zach Collaros. He also, the play that Jerreth Stearns got hurt on was also an incredible layered throw, as was the Wheatfall one over a linebacker. I think the Stearns ones actually got tipped a little bit. Stearns, great concentration, made the catch, got injured and did not return on that play. But even going back to the Ottawa game, Carrick Wheatfall made some very tough grabs, but those were also tough throws from Zach Collaros, where it was a tight window in the middle of the field and he had to throw it at a certain point, at a certain angle, and he's hitting those receivers who have to make tough catches. They're taking big hits to do it, but that's the price you have to pay to catch passes over the middle of the field. And the Bombers receivers, I mean, Stearns got hurt. Wheatfall, we saw some progress with it. Schoen, we know, is amazing at that when healthy. I mean, that's been the biggest question mark for him the last number of years. But if you have Demski, if you have Schoen, if Wheatfall continues to build, he had a strong start, slower in the middle weeks there, and if he continues to build, and then Stearns, if he can get healthy and continue playing at the level he was playing at, because he was playing strong, and then the run game, which we've talked about at length to begin this episode, there is a lot to be optimistic about for this Bombers offense. But like we said, the biggest test lies ahead, where they are going to go into Saskatchewan and take on the number one team in the West, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who are 8-2. They're coming off a loss, a 32-15 loss to the second best team in the West. That's the Calgary Stampeders at 7-3. The Bombers are 6-4. BC's 4-6, and Edmonton, with 3 straight wins, is 4-6, and kind of making a play there for maybe a potential crossover, which is just crazy to say. But the West is very, very competitive, and the Bombers at the 3 spot at 6-4. This is really the defining moment of their season, going up to this Labor Day Classic and Banjo Bowl. I mean, it's the defining moment, you could argue, of every single Blue Bombers season, but just the way the standings are shaking out. I mean, they're not the top 2 teams in the conference right now, but if Winnipeg sweeps, they'd both be 8-2. And if Saskatchewan sweeps, then they'd be 10-2 and the Bombers be 6-6. So it's a very, very wide swing. Even a split would be, obviously Winnipeg wants to sweep, but a split would be very intriguing as well, seeing what Calgary would do the next couple of weeks, maybe overtaking Saskatchewan. So there's a lot to be that we're going to figure out here in the CFL's West Division over the Labor Day and Banjo Bowl home and home between Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. One other thing before we get to buy or sell, or actually let's get to buy or sell, because this is going to be my first question to you, Zach.
Okay.
Let me bring up the graphic. This is the segment where I pepper Zach with buy or sell questions about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and he lets me know if he's buying or selling what I'm trying to tell him. Play along with us in the comments down below, and while you're down there, make sure you hit the like button. Helps YouTube know we're putting out some great content here at Winnipeg Sports Talk, and let us know if you're buying or selling what I'm telling Schnitzy. And Zach, the first thing I'm going to ask you, and I actually put this out on Twitter after the game on Thursday night, Terry Wilson should be the Blue Bombers' short yardage quarterback going forward. Are you buying or selling that?
I am buying it 100%. And maybe there's some recency bias here, Connor,
Same.
but we
Big time.
saw
Oh, big time.
we
I
saw
agree.
yeah, good. Like, I think you can't you can't understate how important that 16-yard run was on third down for Terry Wilson. Now, Terry Wilson drew in because Trevler was playing on offense, so they needed Terry Wilson to play on short yardage.
Mhm.
But just, he had 22 yards on third down or second and short. He had a 7.3 yard average. Now, I know it's, a large part of that is the 16 yards, Connor, but he's getting 2-3 yards with ease on short yardage. Whereas Strevler, even if he gets the first down or gets positive production, seems like he's only getting like a yard or two at most.
Mhm.
So there's push there, but Wilson seems to have that almost home run threat. You saw it last year in the West Final, where
Yes.
he got around Marcus Sales, who maybe over pursued a little bit on third down, and he had like a 48-yard run to set the Bombers up on, I think it was the 5-yard line in that West Final. So
Mhm.
I think there's some jump there. He's got fresh legs. He's younger. He's eager. Give him the rock on short yardage. Build a little bit of a package for him. Take the pressure off Chris Trevler. I would love to see Terry Wilson more on third down.
Yeah, this is something that, again, recency bias is absolutely at play here, but I've liked Terry Wilson in the short yardage, going back to that West Final that you mentioned where he had the explosive play that really flipped field position, put the Bombers first and first and goal from the 5, I should say. And he's really got that athleticism to outrace guys to the edge, outrace the D linemen that are crashing down, outrace the linebackers, and even make plays on DBs at times. So I'd like to see more Terry Wilson going forward. Another thing I'd like to see more of on third and short is this design that we saw. And I'm going to compare it. We spent a lot of time talking about the 2nd and 3 call in the Ottawa game, and I'll bring that up in a second, as a little bit of a comparison. But I love this design on 3rd and 1 from the Blue Bombers and Jason Hogan and this offense. Terry Wilson or not at quarterback, this play was bound to work because you see, I believe it's Peyton Logan is the inside receiver there, and then Brady Oliveira are both in motion at the time of the snap, drawing 2 Montreal defenders away from the side that the Blue Bombers are planning on attacking on this short yardage. They're going right. Terry Wilson goes left, and he ends up taking this 16 yards on a very key play. Look at the score clock. 11:47 remaining in the fourth. A 3-point game. 3rd and 1 from the Montreal 46. This is a defining moment in the game. If Montreal stuffs them here, this game could be a lot different. And Terry Wilson beats everyone to the edge because of a great design, because of his athleticism. And the Bombers go on to score on this drive. This was the Brady Oliveira touchdown drive, and really just a defining moment in the game. Now you go back to the 2nd and 3 in Ottawa and look at this design. Everyone's stationary on the line, and they got stuffed on this play and weren't confident enough to go for it, so they kicked the field goal, and then Khalil Pimpleton ran it back 100-plus yards and tied the game. So whether it's Chris Strevler going forward or Terry Wilson going forward, that design that we saw with guys in motion, eye candy for the defense, misdirection, 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, 2nd and short, 2nd and 2, I'd love to see more creativity in the short yardage unit because we know it's there. We've seen it, Chris Strevler 1.0. It felt like there was tons of creativity. I mean, you had plays where they're snapping it through Strevler's legs and then throwing it with back to Strevler and things like that, right? Darvin Adams is throwing passes from short yardage in key moments, things like that. There's more creativity to be had there than a stationary 2nd and 3 that gets stuffed. And that's something that I'd like to see more of going forward, Zach.
And I just to jump on that for a second, we saw what happened in Calgary, how catastrophic that was when the Bombers were on the Calgary 6-yard line when they end up losing by a point a few weeks ago now.
Right.
It was a very stationary set, very static. Strevler couldn't get the offensive line, couldn't quite get the push. Strevler doesn't quite have the power to get over that line to get the first down. And then you saw in this Montreal game where the Bombers elected to kick short field goals rather than going for it on 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2. And you got to wonder if they started to lose a little bit of confidence with Strevler running that. Listen, his knee got obliterated last year in the Banjo Bowl. does he have the push? Or I don't think he can get around the edge like he used to. Like you were talking about a few years ago when it was Traveler 1.0. I think Terry Wilson does have that burst. And so take advantage of it. Use him as another arrow in your quiver or what have you. And let's see some more creativity. You're absolutely right.
And I will say also, Terry Wilson had another short yardage opportunity where he didn't just get, barely first down yardage.
Yeah.
He got 4 yards, I think, on it, or 5 yards. He got solid push, fell forward. He's a big, strong quarterback, as is Chris Streveler. I just think there's more athleticism there with Terry Wilson. He's a bit faster, has that home run ability, like you said, Zach. And that's something that the Bombers can benefit from because their short yardage unit, while successful, it's been dicey at times. And then they get to the 2nd and 3 in the Ottawa game and they come up short and too short where they don't even feel like going for it again on 3rd and 1 and all of these things. So that's been a talking point so far this season. And I do think Terry Wilson, whether he's the full-time short yardage guy or not, he should be more of an option in those situations going forward for the Bombers because there's more home run ability there. My next one for buy or sell, the Blue Bombers announced the signing of Demario Houston, former Blue Bombers corner, and then went to the Stampeders. Should he start for Vavel or Lawson, Zach? Are you buying or selling that he should start over one of those guys? And which one?
It's a small sample for Dexter Lawson Jr., who was playing the field side corner in this game, but like Alexander Hollins, who's a Bomber killer. If you think back to his time in BC, he has the Bombers number, but he had Lawson's number too. He beat him on a double move. He beat him a couple other times. He's a good receiver. So Lawson is still developing. He's a young player. He's relatively new to Jordan Younger's system. But if you have a guy like Demario Houston, who I believe he was the boundary corner a couple of years ago for the Bombers, where he was a CFL All-Star and had 7 interceptions, led the league, Connor, which led to his nice fat contract from Calgary. If you have a guy like that with that pedigree, I don't see how you don't start him at corner in place of Lawson. Lawson's got beaten for a couple explosion plays because this is a defense that has given up a lot of explosion plays, and they're going up against Trevor Harris. Now, they did lose to Calgary this week, but Trevor Harris leads the league in explosion plays, which is very un-Trevor Harris-like. He's usually thought of as a dink and dunk guy. This year, for whatever reason, he's able to connect on a bunch of long balls. And if Lawson isn't going to improve rapidly, then he's going to hang out that defense to dry. I think as long as Demario Houston, who was on the couch for a while, is back in game shape, Connor, and has knocked the rust off, at the very least, you put him in maybe for a bunch of snaps in this game. But I think at this point, the coaches will look at the film and all that. But I think at this point, you really have to think carefully about putting Demario Houston in for Lawson Jr.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you on that I think Lawson should be the one to come out for Houston because I don't think there's any question that when Houston is game ready and has knocked the rust off, like you said, Zach, he's going in. Jamal Parker, he's missed the last couple of games as well. He was starting at corner when he got hurt. Cam Allen is in at safety now. You've got Holman Nichols at the halfbacks in the secondary. The secondary's been probably the most maligned group for this Blue Bombers team. The explosion plays, which we saw 2 of them in this game against the Montreal Alouettes, have continued, and they're looking for any help they can get there in the secondary. They want to get healthier. They want to get Houston in there. They're hoping Cam Allen can continue what has been a strong first 2 games for him. And going into Labor Day Banjo Bowl against Trevor Harris, the secondary is going to need to be at their best and a lot better than what they've been at for the last number of weeks because he will pick them apart if he has the time to do so and the D-line is not creating pressure. So that was buy or sell. Thank you everyone for playing along in the comments down below. I hope you did. Let me know if you're buying or selling what I'm telling Schnitzy. And let's get to our next segment, Zach, which is the Blue Crew Review. Now, one thing that I notice is we get less and less questions when the Bombers win, as opposed to when the Bombers lose. So we only have one question to get to this week, but that just means more time to preview this upcoming game against the Riders. Yeah. Anyways, Blue Crew Review from Elliot, who submitted a question on, I think, every single Bombers report. So thank you, Elliot. He says, Is it new OC jitters, or does Jason Hogan have something against Brady Oliveira? I just don't understand week after week not giving him the ball. Look at the result tonight when he did. So what do you
Yeah.
think? Do you think this could be a turning point for a lot of fans have been saying that Brady's not getting the touches that we're accustomed to. This is the first game, like we said off the top, this is the first game where we saw that Bombers bully ball really come into play. Do you think it could be a turning point for a new OC, Jason Hogan, that he's found something? The Bombers have maybe found an identity on offense. Where are you at with what this game could mean for Jason Hogan and the relationship with Brady Oliveira and how much he's getting the ball?
It's this may be tinfoil hat here, Connor, but I almost thought the Hogan Brady Oliveira relationship and Brady Oliveira's underutilization was a little bit like, when some kid on the soccer team, his dad is the coach, and that kid is clearly the best player on the league, but dad doesn't want to look like he's favoring his son, so he benches him sometimes, or he's harsh on him, or he doesn't play him enough. I wondered if that dynamic was going on because Hogan, as a first-year OC, needed to establish credibility with the rest of the offense. Now, that might be totally off base. Whatever it is, I'm not exactly sure why Brady Oliveira was underutilized, but to be honest, like, that's a team thing as well, right? Like, if your interior offensive line can't open up holes for you and you're not getting good production, you can't just keep running it up the gut, especially when the other team is loading the box, right? There are times when you run it anyway, absolutely, and to some extent you have to open up the pass game a little bit and get into play action and all those things. But last week in Ottawa, against Ottawa, Brady had a 3.5-yard average. Like, you're not going to keep going back to that if it's not working.
100%.
Now, it worked in this game. So credit Jason Hogan for sticking with this. You could argue he didn't really have much of a choice because of the depleted receiving roster, but he found a way. And one thing I think about, this is less about Brady and maybe it's more about the offensive line. The thing I've learned about the offensive line is that they need to gel. They need to have their timing and their keys on. They need to be on the same page. And this offensive line has been jumbled a lot this year, Connor, with injuries, with Vanderpool coming in, Kendall Randolph moving around. They finally had a few games where they've had all their starters, with Stanley Bryant coming back, and maybe they've gelled, and maybe they're establishing an identity. And Darren talked about this on our bonfire post game, just from all the interviews being around the team. He said this Bombers team was pissed off. And you talked about how hard Brady was running in that bully ball. I think the O-line and the receivers blocking and Brady Oliveira were pissed off. And I think they wanted to make a statement on Thursday night against Montreal. And I think that could definitely be the start of something special. And if they can continue that against the best run defense in the CFL and in Saskatchewan, then like I said, look out, because the Bombers, as long as they stop turning the ball over and throwing all these picks, right? They win time of possession, and they could stay on the field on second down and get first down production, a good first down production. Sorry. I think it is sustainable. It's a way to win in September, October, and November.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that I think is the key for me. Is the run game the past number of years, there's been bully ball moments, but it really shows up in the biggest moments as the season progresses. And if that is something that Jason Hogan can figure out on the fly, because we do have to cut him some slack. He's a rookie OC. It's his first time calling plays in the CFL. That is something that maybe he has to learn on the fly. And yes, the common, connection there was, he's Brady Oliveira's guy. He's the running backs coach. Obviously, they're going to lean on the run. But as a first-time OC, maybe you're trying a few different things out. Maybe you think you need to set the pass up to set up the run, like we said happened in the Montreal game. And I do think that this could be a turning point for the Bombers and their philosophy on offense as they try and get back to that bully ball that we've seen year after year. And it's something that, like you said, Saskatchewan, best run defense in the CFL. That'll be very tough for them to continue, but we'll see if they can. Speaking of Saskatchewan, before we get into that game preview, that was the Blue Crew review. Look out for a tweet at Connor Hrabchak 1. I put it out after every single Bomber game, asking for questions from you Bomber fans. And like I said, drop some more questions after a win, because after a loss, there's too many to get to, and then there's not enough after a win. We got to balance it out a little bit. But thank you, Elliot, for asking a question, and stay tuned for after the Labor Day game. I'll put that tweet out. And if you want to ask us a question, we will have it here on the WST Bombers Report. Now it's time to preview the game that we have been talking about many, many times throughout this episode, Zach, because it's so important in the Bombers season. The Labor Day Classic. The Bombers are 6-4. The Riders are 8-2. Going through some of the stats here for our podcast listeners. Passing yards per game, 283 to 243 in the Rough Riders' favor. Rushing yards per game, Winnipeg has the edge, 119 to 108. Points for per game, very even at 27.3 for Winnipeg and 27.7 for Saskatchewan. But the points against per game is where these two teams are separated. Winnipeg 26.5, Saskatchewan 21.5, as they are the best defense, or one of, in the CFL. Zach, your keys to the game, if you will, going into the Labor Day Classic on Sunday, which you will be in attendance for with the 1930 crew along with us.
Sir.
So maybe touch on the game and then how excited you are to be on the 1930 crew and at the game.
Yeah, it's going to be epic. And because the Bombers have had such a shaky start, kind of reminds me of last year when they started 2-6, but somehow they went into Mosaic and beat the Riders in a close 2-point win. This year would be even sweeter because of how good Saskatchewan's been, Connor, at 8-2. And really, when you're a team that is top 3 in offense, top 3 in defense, you're going to be hard to stop. And that's what the Riders have been. Their full value is, as much as I hate to say it, Trevor Harris having an MOP-like season, right? It's hard to find holes in that roster, aside from Brett Lawther, who missed a 28-yard field goal. And who knows if he even starts the Labor Day Classic, because they brought in Campbell Fair, another kicker. That's a fascinating bit of drama in Riderville. But this is a team that's been dominant, and you saw how they played. You know, people thought Hamilton was the best team in the East coming in, and was gonna, maybe that was a Grey Cup preview, and Saskatchewan absolutely manhandled them. So if the Bombers are going to beat the Riders on Labor Day, a place that's always tough to play, a time that's always tough to play, even if the Bombers are 7-1 and the Riders are 1-7 or whatever it is, right? If they could beat the Riders, not only is it huge in terms of just psychologically for the team to go in there and do that, but then you're looking at the standings, right? Right now, the Bombers are 6-4. If they sweep this series with the Riders, they're tied, and in fact, they have the tiebreaker at that point. And they will have the tiebreaker because they do play 3 times. But if they beat them twice here, it would be incredible. Listen, but it's not going to be easy, Connor. Let's not sugarcoat this. This is the best defense in the CFL, the second best offense in the CFL. Saskatchewan has the best turnover ratio in the CFL, and their run defense is absolutely elite. They only give up about 69 yards average per game, Connor, which is like 10 yards better than the second best run defense. So it's going to be hard to establish the run. Can Winnipeg do that? Well, they did it against Montreal. So if this offensive line is gelled, they can do it. We've seen what Brady can do to opposing linebackers and TPs, right? But more likely, I think, is that Jason Hogan and this Bombers offense is going to go after the Riders secondary, because Saskatchewan gives up pass yards. They really do. They give up the second most pass yards per game in the CFL, 263. But here's the thing. They also have the most sacks. So if you're going to exploit this secondary, you have to protect Zach Collaros. You have to give him a little bit of time. And if they can do that, if they can weather the storm of this elite front 7 that Sask throws at you, there's yards there. Now, then the other question is, not to get too granular, but who's Zach going to throw to? Well, I think we all have to hope that Dalton Schoen is ready to go. He's knocked the rust off in practice. and he becomes your deep threat, because I don't know. I think Demski coming back, just looking at the injuries, not to play doctor, Demski looked like maybe concussion protocol. He's more likely to come back. Stearns looked like something happened to his shoulder or collarbone. I'm not sure. So if they can protect Zach, I think they have to run the ball, even if it's not successful, just to open up play action, zone read, that kind of thing, Connor. And the last thing I'll say is the Bombers, I've tracked this, since 2016, are 68-12 when leading after the first quarter. You saw it again against Montreal last week. So if they can get a lead somehow, get out of the first quarter with a little bit of a lead, establish the run a little bit, doesn't have to be spectacular, and protect Zach Collaros. Don't turn the ball over. This is the Saskatchewan team with the best turnover margin in the CFL. Then they have a chance. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Zach Collaros, with the way he's been playing, have a little bit of a signature game, Zach Collaros revenge tour, go into Mosaic and beat the Riders. And of course, you asked me about the 1930 crew. I mean, I wish you were there, Connor, but
I know
the Hrabchak family, they have their priorities completely backwards
right,
next year, buddy. But
next year.
It's going to be fun. As far as I know, we have 2 spots left. So if you don't have big plans on Labor Day, or you can cancel them and you want to go to this game, it's a no-brainer, folks. Great prices. All you have to do is show up at the bus. Literally all you have to do. Your hotel is taken care of. Your tickets to the game, your transportation to a special dinner we're doing at the Four Seasons there on Saturday night, get you to Wayne's World, get you to the game, get you home, party after, win or lose, because it's just going to be fun either way. It's just a great time. It's a great bunch of people. Shout out to Jeffrey Bannon, Pat Rathwell, and Tara Maslowski for their great job organizing this second annual trip. Last year we had 1 bus. This year we're going to have 2. So it's only growing. Prizes, giveaways, anything you can imagine. It's a special time with a great bunch of people in them. And, you know, as we're on a WST here, Connor, we have the Hus bus. So we've got Hustler going. Carter Chen, I believe, will be on his bus, and then the Schnitzbaum bus with me and Darren bombing for Bonfire Sports. It's going to be epic.
Going to be epic. And as someone who's not going to the Labor Day Classic, I do just want to say that the atmosphere around the Banjo Bowl, if the Bombers are able to win on Labor Day, is going to be, I mean, it's already cranked up to 11. If you want to use that, you know, terminology for the Banjo Bowl every year, it would be cranked up to 12 or 13 or whatever number you want to use. Maybe a Saskatchewan does in 13, but I will say that would be an incredible scene if the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are able to win on Labor Day and bring this thing back to Winnipeg. And that game would be maybe for first in the West, depending on what happens in Calgary. You know, the Bombers, if they went on Labor Day and take 2 of an eventual 3 against the Riders, they'd have the tiebreaker. So there's a lot of things at play there. For me, this game, just really quickly, there's the good, you know, outlook where Dalton Schoen expected to be coming back. Maybe Demario Houston plays. Maybe Demski's healthy. The Bombers are coming off their best running game of the season. Brady Oliveira looks great. Offensive line is gelling. They didn't turn the ball over. The secondary might get a boost with Houston coming back. But then there's the other side of it, where Saskatchewan has the best turnover ratio in the CFL, like you said, Zach, and the Bombers' turnovers have been a massive issue.
Yeah.
And then the running game, their run defense is incredible. And how much of that bully ball that we saw in the fourth quarter late in the game against Montreal can they bring over to this game against Saskatchewan? Because if early on they're trying to establish a run and they can't get it going, it might be a long day for the Bombers offense, because then you're in second and long. Zach has to drop back. They're the leader in sacks, like you said. There's a few things. There's a few ways you can go with this game, and I can't wait to analyze it next week on the WST Bombers Report after you and Huss are back from the 1930 crew. I hope you guys have a great time, and I hope all the WSTers who are heading out there and the Bonfire Winnipeg listeners, there's a lot of crossover there. I hope everyone has a fantastic time, and I can't wait to do it next year. I hope I hope my invite still stands next year. It sounds like an absolute blast.
You're coming for sure. You're coming. I've already sent a strongly worded email to your dad, just saying, like, listen, get it out to the family. Connor's not going to be available
Labor Day
at Labor Day. Okay. And also shout out to longtime WSTer Derek Schmidt. I believe he won the tickets to the 1930 crew. Was it a marble race that he won, or I don't know. I've never even come the top 50 in the marble race, but we'll see. I keep entering, hoping.
Only an elite group, Zach, has won a marble race. I have not either, so I'm not a part of that elite group, unfortunately. But anyways, this has been another long episode of the WST Bombers Report. Thank you so much. If you made it to the end of the video and you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button down below and send it to a Bombers fan that might not know about our show. We would really appreciate it. And we will see you next week. Usually we release these episodes Monday at 9 a.m. with the Labor Day being late Sunday night and Zach being the 1930 crew and Monday obviously being Labor Day. Not sure if it's going to be Monday at 9 a.m. next week. Probably definitely not. So maybe it's a Tuesday release. Maybe it's a late Monday night. We will keep you posted on when the next edition of WST Bombers Report is coming out. And until then, enjoy the game this weekend. If you're on the 1930 crew bus, enjoy your trip. And hopefully the Bombers are coming back with a win. We'll see you next week on the WST Bombers Report. Thanks for watching, everyone.